So I'm here with my colleague, Jennifer McCaney, and we're talking about some of the programs that we have here at UCLA focused on commercializing technology. So the idea that we have here is that essentially being a big research university, there's a lot of really great tech that comes out of these universities. But at the same time, there aren't necessarily as many programmatic opportunities for moving them to a space where they can easily be commercialized. And so UCLA has kind of decided that we build these programs in the format of the Biodesign program and the Innovation Fund. And the way that we imagine them is that they link up to form a natural bridge between the development that would naturally happen here at the university to its eventual commercialization. So here's the way that we tend to think about this. This is not news to anybody who's ever tried to get anything commercialized, is especially when we're thinking about hard tech or real tech, as I like to call it, is there is federal and grant funding for the actual discovery of that technology. And on the far other side of de-risking a lot of these technologies, there's angel capital and venture capital. If there are any startup CEOs in the room, I'm sure that you've encountered this frustration before. And right in the middle is what we call the Valley of Death. And so what we hope to do at UCLA and the UCLA Innovation Fund is bridge that gap between academic science and commercialization. So we have technologies here on campus that have been vetted by their peers and that have demonstrated that there's some sort of clinical opportunity there and that there's some sort of technical possibility of getting them accomplished. We do some due diligence with the deans and take them to a place where they can pull together a proof of concept with flexible capital, and then we finally get them to a place where we can eventually get to an exit opportunity. And one of the best feeder programs that we have for the UCLA Innovation Fund is the Biodesign program. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jennifer McCaney, so she can talk a little bit about that.
Thank you, Matthew. And just to be clear, Matthew is the bridge. He oversees all of the medtech projects in our innovation fund. And so he's basically supporting up all those activities you saw on the last slide. As Matthew said, I oversee the UCLA Biodesign program, which is really meant to be both a technology development program, but essentially a leadership program as well. Because if you develop a technology, you also need to be able to commercialize that technology, hire a team, get a check from an investor. And so we really look at leadership and technology together in this program. We do that by bringing together fellows from all across medicine. We bring in engineers from outside of the university, and they come together here on our campus. They immerse in situ in our health system for a year. And we have a program both for trainees, so like postgraduate fellows, as well as for faculty. And so today you'll hear from two of our faculty that have gone through our accelerator track, and one of whom has also gone through the Innovation Fund and recently incorporated her first venture. So I'm really excited to be able to share that. We also send our fellows out into the world. This is one of our biodesign teams at the Rice Business Plan competition 2 years ago, Aerosolve, who actually is presenting in the demo track today. And so we really think about sort of a catch and release model, right? We have these fantastic, amazing, talented individuals with a passion, and we connect them with the network, many of you in the ecosystem in the room, to be able to commercialize that. At the same time, we also have a very strong focus. You heard from Dr. Medell Briggs-Mallinson, my counterpart in overseeing the UCLA Health Tequity Accelerator. And this is really a longitudinal arm to our focus on technology development with an equitable mission at the core of that. And so the UCLA Health Tequity Accelerator, we build up ventures, right? Tequity is about how do we bring them back in? How do we work with the community to bring technology that's developed with an equitable lens, that's meant to serve underrepresented populations who sometimes don't get those investor checks because they don't have the billion-dollar market? And that's really what we've done with the UCLA Health Equity Accelerator in the past years with myself and Dr. Briggs-Mallinson in leading this initiative with members of the LA ecosystem to support underrepresented founders who are developing technologies for historically underrepresented or vulnerable populations. And so I encourage you, if this mission resonates, please come find me or one of my team members and talk to us about Biodesign or the Health Equity Accelerator. So with that, I will turn it over to our first presenter, Dr. Sid Anand, who's a hematologist oncologist here at UCLA, as well as the Director of Quality Improvement in the Division of Hematology Oncology. Sid is going to present his venture, Health Bites.
Hi, everyone. Really excited to be here and lucky to be a part of this excellent biodesign program that's been just phenomenal. Welcome to the revolution in healthcare information. I started this journey a few years ago when my mom went through breast cancer, and I was an internist at the time. And I was baffled by the lack of adequate resources on the web that I was looking for. I had so many questions. I was scared out of my mind. And we had 20 minutes with our oncologist, maybe. And what it took for me to get the answers to my questions was really leveraging my network as a physician and finding oncologists to speak to. And I realized not many people have access to that, obviously. And fast forward, I actually pursued oncology as a career. And in my practice, I noticed the same thing. I get 20 minutes with a patient. I have to explain complicated subject matter from diagnosis to treatment side effects to surveillance to all of the myriad of questions they have in that little visit. Patients are going on the web on their own, and they're finding information that's sometimes misinformation. It used to be one patient a month. Now it's one patient a week that are not pursuing evidence-based practice guidelines due to things they're learning on the web. And so this convinced me that there has to be a better way of doing this. The problem really is that existing healthcare resources, whether it's WebMD or Google Health or everything you get exposed to, are either too vague to be pertinent because diagnoses are so specific, or sometimes misleading and inaccurate. And patients always want the best care, and they want access to the experts. There's experts in the country that are at leading institutions that have better ways of practicing medicine than in other places. And everyone should have access to this. We have to reduce inequities in the space so that everyone gets the best care. And as we know, that improving the patient's journey, helping them understand their condition, can really optimize health outcomes. As a physician, you get maybe 2 hours a year to spend on that patient's condition. That patient, it's life and death. It's every single day they're living and breathing this, and they need access to the best information. So Health Bites is the single best resource for healthcare content. It's a free mobile platform where users can access curated healthcare information from validated experts in the field. It's using a match algorithm so that you can input your very specific diagnoses. It's not just colon cancer, but BRAF mutated right-sided metastatic colon cancer. And with that, I can deliver to you the most relevant information for that specific condition. It's almost serving like a second opinion without you spending thousands of dollars and flying to Mayo Clinic or UCLA. We're going to use the most cutting edge data to supply these videos, and that's through people going to conferences. This may not even trickle down to the practice until it's published in a year's time. So if you can go to your community oncologist and say, hey, I saw Health Bites, this video post about this really innovative concept. Can you look into it for me? And in the back end, we're going to use this data and actually trial accrual opt-ins from patients to actually drive innovation and recruit patients for clinical trials. The end user target market is really going to start with chronic disease verticals, cancer being the first one, going into cardiology and endocrinology, for example, but eventually move forward to routine care, even wellness and prevention, answering all those questions that you go on WebMD and get frightened about, like cough, which leads to some scary results sometimes. But it's aimed at being multidisciplinary. So not only currently on the platform can you follow an oncologist, but a dietitian, a chemotherapy certified RN, and you have a team. You suddenly have a team behind you, which you may even lack at some of the cancer centers that you're being treated at. The market size, we have a huge existing population of patients. And if they're skewing older, it's usually family members who are on existing social media sites. And we have a lot of patients who have chronic diseases. So we have a big starting place. And on the content side, you have a ton of US providers, some of whom are already on social media, but there's a whole swath of docs that can start to be on this type of platform. The way it works simply is it's going to be a clinical intake. This is going to use some type of AI engine. So this is not built yet, but Google Dialogflow, chatbots, things like that to get the most accurate inputs. We're going to initially use some quality review checkpoints, but the back end is going to be a large library of short format videos that is populated by actual physicians, actual RNs, actual dietitians, validated licensed professionals in our video library, and aiming at short format videos. So 1 to 3 minutes in length, not 45 minutes like YouTube, how people are digesting content now, which is short attention span. Eventually quality review, and then we feed our initial customer being the data side, which you'll see. As you know, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, very disorganized right now, sometimes misinformation, but sometimes very useful. And this is going to basically be the best source for healthcare information that's going to supplant all of these things. We're playing in a space where social media is starting to increase in terms of healthcare knowledge and information, but really, I think we're creating a new space because we're being so specific with healthcare information. We're actually serving as a medical service. We're almost going to be a second opinion company because we have such specific recommendations through the engine but it's free. It's not $1,000. You don't have to fly to Mayo Clinic. This is supposed to reduce these inequities and bring everyone the best care. Our competitive advantage, this is going to be the first app to feature real-time validated healthcare content. It's going to have a memorable brand user experience, and our moat is going to be these experts. So I have right now 2 of the best GI oncologists in the West Coast, if not the country, on the app producing content. Patients may not know who these people are, but their doctors do. And so when I went to the 2 cancer centers that are currently going to be pilots, and they knew that, it was an immediate acceptance that, hey, we're going to use this for healthcare content because this is excellent. Right now, there really isn't a go-to for any doctor to say, use this. This is the best source for healthcare information. This is going to be that. The revenue journey, we're going to start with a data aspect of this. So from multiple discussions with CROs, pharmas, there's an immediate need to know who these patients are, where they're being treated, what stage they're at, to plan trials. We also want to accrue patients to clinical trials, which will be a feature through the app. And then also there's a KOL marketing piece to this. Eventually, as we demonstrate outcomes with health systems, we'll be white labeling this and health systems will be a partner. And fast forward down the line, as this consumer engagement grows, there'll be a wonderful advertising opportunity and lead gen opportunity for large provider health systems and currently how WebMD is making money. Milestones, we're at kind of phase 5. I'm looking to raise a pre-seed round. It's been mainly friends and family up to this point. I have 2 health system partners that are going to be using the application and multiple oncologists, luckily, that are going to be using this for their patients. One of the interesting areas that has brought up with these partnerships was looking at Spanish language content. So again, reducing inequities, being able to produce content in a native tongue to that patient where talking through an interpreter is so difficult. So I'm really excited about that. The team, small team, I have a tech team up in Agora and a couple of brilliant advisors and starting to grow. Actually met one of my new advisors through the Biodesign program, Jacqueline Tribati, who's excellent. And I've had wonderful feedback from beta testing. It's live on iOS and Android, so I encourage you to download it. Health Bites, BYTES. I'd love to show you a quick demo if I can access the clip.
Hey, it's Whitney, the cancer dietitian, here today to talk to you about a new product that's out. This product is called Interade. So this is a clear liquid.
We have about 45 providers on the app. We've tested in about 300 patients so far. Here's a Spanish language section. This is an oncologist who speaks fluent Spanish.
El tratamiento del cáncer de pulmón es un tema complejo. Su manejo depende de la etapa de la enfermedad y puede incorporar varias metodologías. Si el tumor es muy pequeño.
And you can follow docs and dietitians, and actually there's home pages for each of these individuals, sort of like social media. But we also have coping strategies. This is a social worker who's worked with.
Hi, I'm Alyssa. This video is going to cover 2 types of coping strategies and the skills related to those coping strategies to help you deal with your diagnosis and treatment of.
All right. Look forward to your questions. Thank you.
All right. Just moving on really quickly, we can take questions and answers at the end of the full session. I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Ricky Savjani, the inventor of a novel device for targeted irradiation of bladder cancer.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Sid. I think I've known him for a while. I've never met him in person, so there's another bridge to gap. We even share a patient together. It's kind of cool that we're here together now. But yeah, my name is Ruki. I'm a radiation oncologist, and I'm really happy to share with you my idea, our idea on vesico RT. An executive summary is that there's a current problem in the treatment of bladder cancer. Essentially, we use external beam irradiation where we're generating high energy X-rays to focus at a moving target, the bladder. And there's several limitations with doing that. What we're proposing to do is to change the game a little bit and make it such that we're using internal radiation to treat the entirety of the bladder from the inside using what we call brachytherapy. And let me explain that problem a little bit to you. This is our team. I was a resident when we first started doing this project, and Dr. Robert Chin, who's been a longtime mentor of mine, and the head of the head and neck service, had this idea when he was a resident nearly 10 plus years ago and has developed this over time. And then we have our chair of our brachytherapy services, Dr. Cheng, and our chair of our physics services, or one of our chairs of physics services, Min Song Kao. And even passing this down to the next generation, we now brought on Dr. Liu, who's one of our current residents, who's helping us to advance pieces of the technology too. But the essential problem in bladder cancer is that you have to play these games to treat the cancer. Either you're playing this whack-a-mole game where you're trying to whack the cancer where it pops up, or you're trying to play operation where you're trying to remove this complex and large pieces of anatomy to get rid of the cancer, or you're trying to shoot a moving target. Let me walk you through what that is. So if you have areas of bladder cancer here that are kind of highlighted in blue, the standard of care procedure is to do a transurethral resection of the bladder tumor, or TURBT. And so you could do that and you can remove them and then it goes away. But there's an 80% chance that it's going to pop up somewhere again because you didn't provide any focal treatment to that new blue spot. So you're playing this game of whack-a-mole. If you do a cystectomy and you're doing a game of operation, the unfortunate part is that you have to remove large pieces of the anatomy. You have to remove not only the bladder, but in males, you're removing the prostate, the seminal vesicles, and a portion of the urethra. And in a female, you're also removing all the reproductive organs, the fallopian tubes, the ovaries, portions of the vagina, and the urethra as well. And so the patient really has to relearn how to urinate. So historically, we used to use urostomy bags where there's an external bladder. These days, there's more neobladders where you're making an artificial bladder that's reconnected, but it's very likely that a patient will need to self-catheterize multiple times a day still and really relearn how to urinate. And with external beam, this is our shooting a moving target, right? So no matter if I gave you the exact 1 liter of fluid to drink at the exact time of day, your bladder will not inflate to the same size and volume despite the same control. There's a lot of physiological factors that go into it. So your volume is amorphous, and what this results into is some dose spillage. So if I'm trying to shoot this target with external beam, I have to make the beam wide enough, but I am covering now portions of the urethra, portions of the rectum, and even portions of the pelvic bones. And all this can result in toxicity, right? And so as a result, we have to go slow. And what I mean by slow is that patients have to undergo 5 weeks of chemotherapy and radiation, and they're not done. We have to do a cystoscopy in the middle of that treatment. We examine if there was a treatment response. Did those tumors shrink? If they did, hey, good, guess what? You have to do 2 more weeks of chemotherapy and radiation. So you're looking at 7 weeks plus. And if it didn't respond, you go back to the operation and you have to get the cystectomy and the removal of the organs. And so we don't have a really good external beam radiation solution. So the internal beam solution is that could you do this in 5 treatments where you put a radioactive source inside the bladder and radiate the entirety of the bladder wall uniformly without causing the toxicities? And this enables us to be able to do high doses of radiation internally in a focused manner. And I really like cartoons, and this is the best way that I came up with to explain this, which is that we would put a catheter in and drain the bladder of the contents. So the urine would get completely drained out first. And then the second part is that we would then put in a catheter that could inflate the bladder to a uniform sphere. And that's the same size and shape for every patient. So we can do consistent dosimetry across all patients. And then the third step is that we put in a catheter in, and we can inflate the bladder with any fluid that we want, and we can put a radioactive source and now deliver radiation uniformly without spillage into any neighboring targets. neighboring anatomy. Here's a view inside the device. So it would be the same idea that you'd put this catheter in, you could inflate the balloon and inflate the bladder to a perfect sphere. And then even though that there's a particular tumor that we're trying to treat, this approach is going to give uniform dose to the entirety of the bladder wall. And that provides a unique opportunity because we're not radiating just the particular tumor. And then the seed can be taken out. The catheter can then be taken out all through the urethra, all as an outpatient procedure, which is standard of care in urologist's office and also in radiation oncology departments. And we can do this in as few as 5 treatments or any treatment modality or regime that we'd like. And so, this is kind of outlining the games that I was mentioning that we're having to play and the multiple stages of treatment. And really our approach kind of can fit the bill at every stage of cancer. So whether it's early stage and you're looking at superficial disease or all the way into muscle invasive disease or even metastatic disease, and you can use this approach to treat the primary or the bladder cancer where maybe the bulk of the disease might be. And there's a lot of evidence across multiple cancers that treating the primary may have benefit. So if we look at the market potential, this is about a $250 million global bladder cancer therapeutic industry in 2022. There's about 80,000 new cases, about almost 20,000 deaths in the US alone in 2020. And so most of the cancers are these non-muscle invasive invading tumors. And providing earlier treatment, we can prevent the conversion of early stage superficial bladder cancers into muscle invasive cancers. And even for muscle invasive cancers, we can still provide treatment for them that's much less toxic. Dr. Robert Chin spent years to procure the patent and actually did procure the patent through the help of UCLA TDG a couple of years ago now. And multiple portions of this device have been secured in IP. The other thing that we can now do is you can do simultaneous chemotherapy and immunotherapy. So this is intravesicularly or within the bladder. You can infuse any agent that you'd like to and do it simultaneously with radiation. And we can experiment with new paradigms that can help decrease local recurrences in the bladder. The competitive landscape is actually not that much. One, we have the IP that's secured here, but number two, the only approach that uses bladder brachytherapy is this device called the Lunray, developed by Electa, but it's markedly different. It is through the skin, and it goes into the bladder, and it goes only into the area that you can see the tumor in. And so this requires expertise. You need to have a very experienced brachytherapy team, a radiation oncology team that not a lot of centers have that need to be able to do this. And it depends on, the experience of the individual physician, right? Because they have to be able to target that. And actually the initial trials on this were not so successful, and I don't think they've continued accruing on it. And then, so, looking at what this device offers versus the others is that it's minimally invasive. We treat the entire bladder wall. The expertise is already something in the wheelhouse of urologists and radiation oncologists, and the toxicities are much reduced. So comparing to Lunray technology or the external beam radiation or surgery, we have a different paradigm of treating patients. And there are risks, and we need to mitigate these risks. This is where we're working on now. In the technical component, we're working on developing 5 prototypes, hopefully working with a medtech company that Matthew has helped us communicate with. But these devices would allow us to then first develop the quality assurance to make sure that we can inflate the bladder consistently into uniform size, that we can safely insert and remove the device through the urethra without causing injury and without losing any radioactive seeds or elements into the bladder. And then we need to maintain this. So we need to check for usability. We need to adopt it clinically and then go through the regulatory risk process. Fortunately, many other players in this space have already vetted all the individual constituent components. So, for example, in breast cancer, many institutions do what we call intracavitary brachytherapy. So the device, the balloon, all the individual components are actually FDA approved. What hasn't been done is putting this through the urethra as one of the biggest challenges in delivering radiation into the bladder with consistent size and shape. This is a process that's done intraoperatively during a lumpectomy, for example, and actually not something we do here at UCLA, but some institutions do it. But what is nice, companies like Hologic have a large regime and a large practice of doing this type of treatment. So in summary, I think what I primarily do is use external beam radiation to treat patients with head and neck cancers, actually. And in head and neck, we have the same problems that we're radiating normal tissues, we're giving dose to them and causing them toxicities. This is a problem in bladder cancer, but we have a solution that tries to insert insert the catheter into the bladder and treat the entirety of the bladder wall and help provide a better solution. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Ricky. And finally, we have Dr. Renea Sturm with SurgiZipper.
Thank you. Excited to be here with you all. And that was a great setup, actually. I think we're going along the way of some related diseases. And so this will be interesting to kind of follow this forward. I'm Dr. Renea Sturm. I'm a urologist here. I have co-founded SurgiZipper with Dr. Kadem Hosseini. It's a device that addresses the need for reinforcement of internal suture lines in dynamic organs that empty and fill throughout the healing process. So I'm board certified in both adult and pediatric urology, and I take care of the range of conditions that affect the urinary tract. I also have a NIH and NSF funded lab that focuses on the development of highly elastic biomaterials with additional collaborators in tissue engineering. And so this really arose from observations in clinical practice, as well as the development of elastic materials and testing the bladder and urethra for their tensile properties, or the properties that they have that allow it to contract and fill throughout the voiding process. And so to understand the challenges related to reconstructing the lower urinary tract, it's important to understand the physiology of this tissue. So we empty and fill our bladders approximately 200,000 times or more throughout our lifetime. And this continues, as was just mentioned, in these complex procedures whenever we do replace the bladder with bowel, or we augment the bladder with bowel. And so that risk of damage and leak, especially after you've had, say, chemo radiation to that tissue, and you try to reapproximate it and then have it cycle, is very high. There's about approximately 50% costly complications and readmissions in these patients, with approximate cost of $35,000 per complication. And there are approximately 680,000 annual urinary tract reconstructive procedures performed in the U.S. each year. Our standard of care closure in these procedures is actually a multi-layered suture closure. So what we do in the operating room is we approximate the tissue in a couple of layers, and then we often add a final imbricating or overlying layer to really minimize the risk of leak. But remember, we're bringing abnormal tissues often together that may leak and may not be supported by these suture lines. Unfortunately, as you see in other organs, we really don't have adhesives or staples that are available to us, in part because adhesives often fail with cyclic function or in a moist environment. They can be toxic to tissue. And then staples are not flexible. They also promote stones or infection when they're used in the urinary tract. So our solution is the SurgiZipper. This is a flexible bioabsorbable material that's tuned to the tissue mechanical properties to which it's applied. It's biocompatible, cost-effective. It can be readily applied just by placing it on the tissue. It has a bioadhesive mechanism that actually is designed after the way that muscles adhere in their environment. And so it's effective in moist environments. It can be applied to a range of tissues using open or robotic platforms, which is very important in urology in particular. I've had the opportunity to work with an exceptional multidisciplinary team, both in material science as well as on the clinical side, and in addition to really learning with the Biodesign program and working with the TDG. So to inform our device development, we participated in the NSF program called ICOR. We performed over 150 stakeholder interviews early on in the process to really understand what the potential limitations and important value propositions were in this space. Across stakeholders, they're decreasing this high level of complications, particularly those relevant to technical factors, was a priority. And so SurgiZipper does this. It reinforces suture lines with a value of decreasing total 30-day complications and readmissions by approximately 20%, saving the hospital an estimated almost $6,000 per procedure. Putting this together, the anticipated initial market using an estimated $500 per device cost would be about $340 million, just focusing on half of those initial urologic select procedures. But this could be rapidly scaled up to additional tissues, additional areas, including adjacent areas such as gynecology or GI. So the materials we use are a combination of readily available and materials that have been FDA approved as individual components, including glycerol and sebacic acid to produce PGS. We've also created a bioadhesive layer by functionalizing that with a catechol group called L-DOPA. We found that there can be mechanical properties similar to the bladder. These materials can be modified through their components. They can also be modified by varying the heating time, etc. And importantly, we've been able to find that we can achieve mechanical properties similar to bladder. We've also completed cytocompatibility testing and assured there's no cytotoxicity in this environment. And importantly, when you apply this to a bladder and you fill that bladder, compared to commercial alternatives, these behave favorably, in many cases improved, and in others at least the same as current commercial alternatives. Our developmental milestones to date, we've been funded by the InnovationFund at TDG. We've also been part of the I-Corps program as well as the PFI program through the NSF and are applying for SBIR. We're looking to raise $750,000 to reach pilot production in addition to that, the funds that are available. And right now, I really did want to bring up also that we are actively seeking a CEO or business advisors for our development. Thank you so much. I look forward to meeting all of you.
All right. So thank you for staying engaged throughout this entire set of presentations. And thank you to the folks who've presented so far. I want to open it up for any opportunity for anybody in the crowd to ask any questions. There's a mic right there in the center if you have any. Dr. Arnold.
Dr. Savary. Hi, everyone. My name is Alana Arnold. I'm a pediatric ER doc. I have a question for Sid. The short story is that I have a great deal of interest in what you're doing just because I'm working in the ER. There's a lot of PCP type questions, Googling, all that type of thing. So I just wanted to know, is there any pediatric component to what you're building with Health Bites?
Absolutely. I think that's a huge area. I have a pediatrician on the platform now, but I think it's a huge area that's going to be of great need because a lot of folks are interested in that. I'm trying to go vertical by vertical, but yeah, I'd love to talk.
Yeah, I'll definitely connect with
Please,
you. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, follow-up question. My name is Dr. Justin Renan. I'm a dentist in the Beverly Hills, Brentwood area. I was wondering if you had anything in regards to the oral systemic connection and towards dentistry on your platform.
It's a huge need. Even within cancer, like we never talk about dental health, and it's so important. When dentists see cancer patients, I'd love to talk to you too about. Yeah, I think it's huge.
I also have an office in Cedars, and it's amazing how so many doctors don't make the connection from lung issues to A to Z. It's really surprising how they don't connect the mouth to the rest of the body, and they have a huge disconnect. So I would definitely love to talk to you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, it looks like we've gotten through all of our questions, and so now would be a good opportunity to break for lunch. But before we do, I just wanted to once again mention that this set of presentations that we had today, while great, was just a representation of what we have here at UCLA. And we're going to continue to ask you to stay engaged here at UCLA as partners in development and investment in the technologies that we have here. And I look forward to meeting you at lunch.